Sometimes in the videos you open the wine bottles. How does that fit into the business model?
I see this wine and I think, guys, you have to buy this. It's so cool. La Romani Conti 1990, for example, which I opened on one of my videos for a photo. And that was quite scary, but very exciting.
You look quite similar. So that's funny. You are the ambassador guy of the wine world with the beard and everything.
A long lost brother. I kind of thought, we need to show fine wine in a slightly different way.
How you communicate it, I think it's really approachable. And I think this way we can really bring in more people into the culture of wine. This is a great stepway stone.
Exactly, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to say as well. Rarity is the key. If you're buying something where there are thousands of bottles in the world, why is that going to increase in price? You have to ask yourself the question. If it's released, like it's a massive rarity, you can't get hold of it, it's all on allocation, that's probably where the money is. And then you find yourself spending far too much money on Burgundy, which is...
You have opened wine boxes, probably worth hundreds of thousands or maybe even millions of dollars.
But for me, if I could choose anything, I would go for...
Hello everyone, this is the Caparpát podcast, and today my guest is Haughton. He is the private client sales representative of Seckford Wines and affectionately known online as the Master Box Opener. Will's enthusiastic and entertaining presentation of legendary wines have captured the hearts of the wine community. Let's dive into his world of iconic bottles, fascinating clients, and the art of fine wine. Well, Will, thank you for joining us. It's a real honor to have you on the podcast, and welcome. How are you? How are you doing? But before we continue the discussion, we are happy to announce that we are partnering with Inventory, a tool that is transforming wine collection for enthusiasts like us. Picture this, you are eager to open that special bottle, but can't quite remember where you have stored it. Inventory ensures that never happens again. Designed by wine lovers for wine lovers, it simplifies and enriches how you manage your collection. In fact, let me show you how it works. Let's say I want to find my Chateau Corban 1996. You just open up Inventory on your iPad and here it is, Chateau Corban 1996. You just tap on locate and it is going to localize it in your cellar. As you can see, here it is, my Chateau Corban 1996 in my cellar in the exact location. Need to check drinking windows or adding a new bottle with just a label scan? It's seamless. And when it comes to meal planning, their AI assistant offers pairing suggestions that make every dinner feel special. Whether you're a new collector or managing a sophisticated cellar, Inventory has a tier designed for your needs, from comprehensive free access to advanced management options. It gives you more time to enjoy the wines you love without the stress. So if you are looking to elevate your wine experience, check out Inventory. It's available on your iPhone, your iPad, and your desktop. Find it in the App Store or visit inventory.com. Now back to the video.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thank you very much. I'm very well, thank you. It's start of the Christmas rush, so it's all a bit crazy at the moment, but it's interesting, and there's plenty of fun things going on. So, yeah, all is well.
I can imagine that this is an exciting season for you. Well, I think we should start with the elephant in the room. In the past months or a year on Instagram, you have opened wine boxes. Probably worth hundreds of thousands or maybe even millions of dollars. How do you get into this position? What is your background story and how did we end up here?
Sure. So I kind of started off in wine by mistake, totally. I was at Majestic Wines for about 2 years. Okay, so I was just a sales assistant, then I grew up to be assistant manager. And then I ended up going to Seckford, and it was... So obviously at Majestic, it's very much it's retail, it's kind of more entry level, right? There have some high-end things, but predominantly it's, £10 a bottle, that kind of thing. And so when I joined Seckford, and instantly I was selling, things like Le Fleuve and Moros, and instantly the level just jumps up. And it took me quite a while to get to grips with it, because when you're suddenly working with wine, which is just so incredible, you feel a bit lost, because it's not something you've ever seen before. And I felt, as someone that already loved wine and that was really interested in it, I felt a huge gap between what I knew, what I was used to, and suddenly what was just presented to me. And it was a big steep learning curve. And I think I needed probably a year just to get to grips with what I was selling, because, you know, you go from selling a £10 bottle of Sauvignon Blanc to selling a £3,000 bottle of Burgundy. It's a bit of a different ballgame. So I did WSET level 3, I've done diploma now. And when, you know, throughout my time at Seckford, I kind of thought, you know, well, we need to show fine wine in a slightly different way, because there's a huge amount of people in the world that just out of their kind of, well, not out of their reach, but it's they don't see it, right? So people don't generally get the chance to even think about these wines. They're not in front of them. They're not being talked about enough because they're being hidden away in cellars. They're being drunk at private parties. And my idea was that, you know, we're selling all this wine. Let's talk about it. Let's get it out. Let's make it approachable. Let's find a strategy to bring it closer to normal wine lovers. So that's where we are.
I think you really succeeded with your videos. I think you kind of touched on the best tone of communicating these wines. First of all, your personality probably it's coming from deep within. Your enthusiasm really shows even for the people who maybe not even deep into the wine culture. They might not understand the way of opening such cases or such bottles, but how you communicate it, I think it's really approachable, and I think this way we can really bring in more people into the culture of wine. This is a great stepway stone.
Exactly, yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to say as well, because I think it's all a journey, right? So it was a journey for me, just as it is for anyone else. And we go from starting off buying cheap wines in the supermarket, thinking, oh, I quite like this, to then suddenly taking that one step above, and then you take that step and you think, actually, this is great. And so you make that step, and then a little bit later you make another step, and then, you know, and then you find yourself spending far too much money on Burgundy, which is
that's
dangerous.
That's the final level,
absolutely,
of wine enthusiast. So how did you end up at Seckford?
So obviously my experience at Majestic was predominantly in sales. I happened to live very close to Seckford, so it was very convenient, and took me on. And since that point, it's been just a one-way ladder upwards, really, because, you know, we've done really well. We've created a lot of kind of new structures in order to present these wines in a slightly different way. My actual kind of background is languages, so I wasn't really ever considering wine before I started Majestic, and it all kind of happened a bit by random. I just loved it. I think from the first day I was working in the wine industry, I found something incredible, found something I really, really loved, something I really loved talking about. And it was a really fantastic opportunity for me to explore something in a work environment, but something that I loved. You know, it's not very often you get to work with something that you really enjoy, you know, fully. And you know, you adore the subject, the culture, everything about it, really. So I was very lucky, I think.
That's interesting. Well, the best things are pretty random. It's hard to calculate them. But I think, as you said, that your background is in languages. That pretty much maybe explains your way of presentation. In this way, you were quite ready for this job on the internet as well, not just at Seckford. Seckford is so famous for like wide wine selection and extremely rare wines. What is the process of sourcing these wines, and where are they buying them?
We are extremely lucky because we have our own bonded warehouse. So we store wines for clients the world over. We have enormous reserves of wine that are stored with us, and quite a lot of the time sold through us. So, for example, at the moment, there are 6,100 wines available on our website. Different wines.
Wow.
As you can imagine, that's quite difficult.
So 6,000 different wines, meaning that for some wines there are like multiple bottles.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know how many cases or bottles there are in total, but 6,000 different individual wines. And you can imagine how difficult it is to work with 6,000 wines, just to know what they are. You know, if someone calls you up and you have to instantly know exactly what you're talking about. And, you know, I'm not going to lie, I haven't tried a lot of them. It's impossible, you know.
Of course.
It's such variation there. And there are wines that probably don't exist anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, I can imagine. So what's the exact business model? They are working with wine storaging, so for like as a service, and also buying, selling.
So I guess the basis that we work on is buy, store, sell. Okay.
Okay, so you're also waiting for appreciation, like as an investment, and strategically selling it later, maybe?
Sometimes, but the majority of the time, it's our customers, our storage customers that do that.
Okay.
So the storage customers buy the wine from us, they store it with us, and then they sell it, hopefully for a profit later on. And that's our tagline: buy, store, sell. So we have all of these wines stored with us, which means that when they get listed, we can check the condition instantly. We can get photographs instantly. Yep. We can check the bottles. I can go down and take a photo on my phone if you want. We can list them for sale, and we have obviously a very wide base of customers from around the world that we can sell to. And it's a fantastic business in general because we can cater for everyone really, for all needs. We have bottles from, I guess we start probably at about £20 a bottle up to £30,000 a bottle.
Which wine is that?
It's either Le Roi or it's Bisou. I think it's Bisou. And, but also at the same time, DRC, La Romani Conti 1990, for example, which I opened on one of my videos for a photo. And that was quite scary, but very exciting.
I can imagine. So I just wanted to ask you the exact same thing. Sometimes in the videos you open the wine bottles. How does that fit into the business model? Or do you, the company hold like wine tasting events, and you are opening the bottle before the wine tasting? Or how does that work, opening like thousands of dollar bottles just for Instagram videos? I'm sure that, I would guess that it's not just for the Instagram video.
Well, we try a lot in the office. Okay, and we have bottles that are put to one side to taste. So we get the opportunity to open these things now and then. And when we do, I always make sure that I can go and take a video because it makes sense.
Of course.
It's not very often. The majority of instances where we open bottles, they're probably around £30 to £40, something like that. It's nothing crazy. It's just normal marketing budget. But yeah, if there is something more exciting, then certainly. But also, when I'm out with friends, so we have wine dinners sometimes, wine tastings, I always make sure that I have someone ready to take a video just in case, because it's, I want to share it. I want people to see and experience it as well. And I think for me, wine is all about emotions. Emotions is probably the biggest part of it. How you feel when you drink that bottle. And so if I can share what I'm feeling, I can share my enthusiasm, love and passion for it with somebody else, then I think I've succeeded.
Exactly. So as your role as private client sales representative, what does that entail exactly? And how does your normal work day, what does it consist of?
So that's my official title, but really I am kind of do it everything boy. So we have a very small team. It's private clients, it's just 2 people, and we have 3 people in trade. So it's quite small. Generally speaking, my role is creating content to go out, creating offers, creating videos, working on lists, sourcing wines, buying wines, looking through our own website list to find things to offer to people, looking for, the best deals, the most interesting bottles. Because for me, there's nothing quite like finding a wine that I want people to buy it. It's not malicious. Okay. It's not like it's nothing. It's not salesy. It's just I see this wine and I think, guys, you have to buy this. It's so cool, and I really love that. That's one of the things I like most. So my role has kind of morphed more into a more marketing kind of role, where I generally just create the materials that go out to people, and I write a lot as well, and articles and reviews and tasting notes and things like that. But generally, my role as a private client sales guy is just we have a bit of a strange system at the moment where, because we have very old wines on the list, we don't have e-commerce. So you can't just go on and buy the wine. You go on, you submit an order, I receive the order, then I look at it. If there's a 1958 bottle of wine, I'll get a photograph first and show you, because who knows, right? It could be a low level, it could be damaged label, something like that. So I get I get the photo, send it to the customer, let them know about the provenance, the history, where it's come from, you know, whether they should be drinking it or not, you know, and if it's a young wine, you know, whether it needs storage. So it's quite, there's a lot of guidance involved, and I send that over to my customers, and they reply and say, yes, please, hopefully.
I see. So it's a bit more involved to sell these wines, not just that simple. Yeah, it's understandable. The clients who can afford such wines must be interesting. Do you have any interesting stories or trends that you have noticed? Who are the people who are buying? I mean, not the $20 bottles, but the more higher end wines.
It's usually, I mean, it's people all around the world, and you never quite know who your next customer is going to be. You know, we have good customers, repeat customers that are very loyal to us, and they always come back. And you know, the high-profile names that regularly come to us and trust us because, you know, we're very discreet for one, but also we offer a level of service that a lot of people have stopped doing, and we're very, very hands-on. We're very honest. We'll tell the truth. We won't lie about any wines. We won't recommend something that isn't worth recommending. So it's a lot of people high up in organizations all around the world. A lot of our business is with Asia, and we export a lot of wines over to Asia. The UK market tends to be a little bit on the lower scale in terms of I guess the grade of wine that we're selling, because the majority of people over here are probably buying to drink. So they're buying it, and it's for a dinner party, or it's for Christmas, or it's for, you know, to put away in the cellar and have a bottle now and then. So especially with that in mind, it's very important to us to get the right wines. If someone comes to me with a recommendation, I've got to get it spot on, because someone's spending £600-700 for a case of wine. You know, it's not a little amount of money. So you've got to make sure that you're giving the best possible service. You
said that you export a lot to Asia. Is it true that the Asian market really loves Bordeaux wines? I read somewhere that they really have this passion for Bordeaux.
Yes, they do like it. It's gone a little bit quiet, I'd say, over the last year or two. Well, as it has everywhere in the world, right? The economy of everywhere is a little bit poor. So it has slowed down a little bit, but we do sell quite a lot to Asia from Bordeaux, especially first growth, big names, things that people recognize. At the same time, we have a huge following of Bordeaux in this country, you know, in the UK, because I think it's probably the place maybe where people love Bordeaux the most, or traditionally so, because
it has a history with Bordeaux.
There's a connection, you know, and obviously a lot of the wines have slightly English names, or Irish, you know, Haughton, Segur, and things like this. So there's a lot of history, and there's many links there as well. But yeah, I think the Asian market buys premium quite a lot. They like pristine, you know, perfect condition, good provenance, as I would as well.
Of course. How did you come up with this idea of opening the boxes in the videos? And maybe the other half of the question is that why do you open the boxes? Do you store the wines out of the box, or do you just put them back in the box after the video, or how did this come up?
So I've always loved opening wooden boxes. It gets me quite excited. And we open boxes for photos, usually. Okay, so if we need a photograph for sale, we open the box. Now that means that obviously someone's got to do it. So we have a whole warehouse team that does that usually and takes the photos. And often I come down to have a look and just see what it's like, because, you know, it's quite cool looking at pictures. I used to go down and have a look, and then one day I just thought, you know what, let's open up a box on video. And I was chatting to my friend Luke, and we came up with this idea that we thought would be really quite cool. You know, just because obviously there was a massive trend for opening things on TikTok and Instagram. Not wine necessarily, but just opening things.
Unboxing videos.
Exactly, unboxing videos, yeah. And we thought, let's make that wine related. You know, it's why not? You know, we've got boxes as well, so let's go for it. And obviously it's quite premium, it's quite fun, because you have to use tools, you have to take the nails out, and it's a bit different, a bit quirky. It's just fun, you know. We have this special kind of wine trend going now, which is quite fun.
Yeah, it works, and I think it's even more interesting than the general unboxing trends on the internet, because these treasures, like old bottles, they have been bottled a long time ago. It's like It's like a little treasure box. I have a very weird connection that I just saw as you were talking about this parallel between these unboxing trends and the wine industry. Do you know the Unbox Therapy guide? Like probably the most famous like tech unboxer from Canada. And I think actually he's a bit similar to you. You look quite similar. So that's funny. You are the Unbox Therapy guy of the wine world with the beard and everything.
A long lost brother.
Probably.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that it's so nice to be able to show these things to people when otherwise they would just be hidden forever. That's one of the main things behind this, is the fact that we didn't want it to be hidden anymore. We didn't want it to be closed up in a dark cellar forever. We're getting it open anyway. Let's show people. Let's bring it to life.
Yeah. I think it's a beautiful thing, because obviously lots of people can never afford and probably will never taste such wines. But even me, some of the bottles that you showcase, never tasted them. But even just seeing it and just imagining the thing and seeing the boxes and everything, it's so inspiring. About the provenance, so you mentioned that you are storing lots of wines, but where do you get them originally? Do you work with the cellars or auction houses?
So, bit of everything. We sometimes buy it from sellers that, maybe the customer wants to just empty his cellar, and we buy everything, bring it in, catalog it, make sure it's okay. But we only buy it when we know where it's come from. So a lot of the time with these, we know where the wine was originally purchased from, because the customer is well known to us and we can trust that. So a lot comes from there. Also, we buy from France, we buy from, the Négociant in Bordeaux. And we try and basically make, as long as the provenance is good, and the price is good, then we're interested. Our customers from everywhere, from other merchants, from Bordeaux, entrepreneurs, sellers, they bring it in from everywhere. And so, they can bring in wines from elsewhere to us, and we store them the same as everything else we store.
Did you see any negative reactions? Because on Instagram, it's a pretty wild west of the internet. Probably the comment sections on Instagram is the weirdest out of all the social media platforms. Do you know worse?
TikTok.
Maybe, yeah. I'm not too much on TikTok, but so I can imagine.
We actually started on TikTok. And
oh, really?
Yeah, so for some, I don't know why, it's what we kind of pushed to start with, and we really went quite well at the beginning. We had quite high views on our videos, and we thought this is perfect, this is great. But actually then we kind of started to incorporate Instagram at the same time, and Instagram really took off, whereas TikTok kind of lagged behind a bit. But on TikTok there are lots of quite strong comments. It's bad enough in the comments section, but then if you scroll down to the bottom, you have like a hidden comments, and that's even worse.
Oh wow! Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that are very angry about the prices. They're very angry about how anyone can buy a wine for that price, how that can be normal, how that can be like how can you show this product when people are starving. And I understand it's a huge amount of money that sometimes it's somebody's year salary in one bottle, and to some extent that is quite shocking. But at the same time, these wines exist, they are there, they're in the world, they're being traded, this happens. So for me, I think it's even more important to talk about it, to let people know it's there. Because you can all you want, you can pretend it doesn't exist and say how terrible it is and disgusting, but it's there. It's not going anywhere. I work in this industry. I absolutely love it. Wine for me is incredible. And I get a lot of people saying, well, you have to be stupid to spend £60 on a bottle of wine. But, for me, it's a hobby. It's an interest. And I'm sure they spend £60 on their interest. For me, it's a similar thing. I probably have one bottle of wine a week. I make sure it's a good one. I want to drink something exciting, something I love. So.
Yeah, and it's a lot smarter to drink one bottle of an interesting wine than drink a bottle every single day, like a $10 bottle.
Yeah.
But yeah, I never understood this mentality of looking into other people's wallets and being angry about their decisions. And what do you think about some of the comments when you have like these self-acclaimed professionals who know everything, and they say that, no, that bottle is vinegar, throw it in the garbage, that's very bad.
I get it so often, and I mean, admittedly, some of the bottles I open, some of the old ones, they don't look great. But I've never lied, and I've always told the truth about the wines I'm drinking, and I have been incredibly lucky with the conditions. It's very, very rare that I get anything which is bad. And in any case, I'm the kind of person that always can find that 1% of fruit that's still there in the wine. And so for me, I say, come on, guys, like, but they say it about normal wines as well. You know, all wines taste like vinegar. It's disgusting. Right. And I said, come on, like, come to Seckford, come to see me. I will give you a free tasting of wine, and I will teach you. All I want to do is educate people. I want to give them the tools to understand it, and ultimately, you know, I get people come to me saying, I hate all wine. And I think there is, you know, hundreds of thousands of wines in the world, maybe millions, different wines.
Yeah, there is no such thing as wine. Yeah. There is not an objective, like, strict thing that is wine, and I hate that.
Give me 2-3 days, I'll find you something you'll like easily. So yeah, I think it's a little bit of, I think one of the main problems is wine is quite scary. People don't understand wine. It's this, and you know, you go into the supermarket and you have a wall. How do you understand it? How do you get into it? How do you break that wall down and kind of, you know, how do you understand what you're looking at if you don't have a wine education? It's very difficult.
Yeah.
And I totally understand why it's intimidating for people. I would love to find a way of making it more approachable. And so this is why I did on the other podcast with my friend Luke. We were trying to break down barriers, and that was our main goal. We wanted to bring wine to people, explain it to them. And it's quite good because I'm a fine wine guy, and he is a bit more of a normal wine guy. We
Luke, the TikTok wine guy.
Exactly, Luke. Yeah, Luke, yeah. So, I mean, he lives very close to me, so it's very convenient. But we were doing this just to kind of further our understanding as well of, you know, because through a conversation with each other, we were able to develop ideas. We were able to kind of delve deeper into maybe why it was difficult to understand it. And when we listened to these back, we really realized that a lot of those moments were really quite difficult to understand. You know, there was a lot in there that actually I watched it back, listened to it back, and I thought, I understand this now, but 2 years ago, no chance. And 2 years ago, I was already working in the wine industry. So how can we break it down even further to make it more accessible for people? And that's kind of the direction that we wanted to go in, and that's what we're thinking about now for our next season, because it's just too complicated.
Yeah, pretty much. I was actually wondering, in one of your videos, the person recording, his sound was, I was like, is that Luke? But he wasn't tagged anywhere in the video. I was looking for a tag somewhere, maybe this is Luke, but there was no tag, and I was wondering, is it? Okay.
He has a very steady hand.
That makes sense. Yeah, I can see that. What do you think, where does this theory or this idea in people's minds come from that they get intimidated? Because lots of things are complicated. I'm sure that people don't understand how their food was made. Why is it wine that is so scary that we don't understand? Why don't people can have this idea about wine that this is an adventure, and when I go to the huge wall of wines, it's not like a challenge, a test of my knowledge if I understand it or not, but like a game. I choose this wine, I go home and try it and see what's my opinion. And next time, if I liked it, I try it again, or I go to a different wine. Why is it so scary?
So, in my opinion, it's because imagine you're in the supermarket and you go to where the vegetables are and you go to buy tomatoes. There are 5 different types of tomato. You go to the potatoes. There are 9 different types of potato. Then you go to buy, I don't know, sausages. You have 10 different types of sausages. Pizza, 15 different types of pizza. And then you go to wine. You have 3,000 different types of wine. It's very, very difficult to even begin to understand it because there's very little guidance. A lot of the wine regions of the world are quite old-fashioned, traditional, and they don't really like changing. And what you may notice, I don't know, you may have heard about this, you may have noticed it, that in the UK, the majority of wines that are bought are wines that are easy to say. They're easy to read. Porter 6, LB7, Governor, Villa Maria, Brancott, Oyster Bay.
Yeah.
It's words people know. And if you go into a supermarket, and let's say you have a Maximum Grunhauser Absberg Riesling Cabinet. Who knows what that is, okay? Or maybe at the same time you have a Caudron Viage, and from a producer, and it's a Chateau de something with a name, and then it's got more information on the back. It tells you about 3 grape varieties you've never heard of before. I mean, we know what they are. But a normal, a standard supermarket consumer probably doesn't. And that's the problem. People like names that they can pronounce. Malbec. Malbec is easy. People understand Malbec. Okay? Gewürztraminer. No chance.
Yeah, that's a bit more difficult.
So for me, I think that's the problem. We need to make it simpler. We need to try and find a way to decode it, demystify it. Because, I mean, today I wrote an article about aroma compounds in wine, okay? And how flavors are developed through the fermentation process, and esters and terpenes and everything like that. I was writing that, and I was confused. And I was thinking, well, how? And I get a lot of questions on social media saying, well, it's just grapes. There can't be any other flavors. And I spent this time today to write this article because I wanted to kind of give my opinion on the matter and try and make it clearer. But I wrote it all, and I went back and I thought, this is really complex. This is basically is quite high biochemistry. And I'm not I'm not a scientist, I'm not a chemist, I'm not a biologist. For me, it's a whole new world. I just about understand it. I understand the basics of it. But, how can you give that information to someone that basically just knows maybe Pinot Grigio and Malbec? It's hard to break it down into pieces because wine is an incredibly complex product. It's a lot deeper than we think. And I think probably a lot of people that really do love wine probably still struggle with some of the more intricate details because, I mean, I've just finished my diploma and it killed me. The amount of information you need to know for the diploma exam is just mind-boggling. It's crazy.
Yeah, wine chemistry is really complicated, and it's the most complex beverage in the world. So, but it was great that you highlighted this idea, and I tell this multiple times. I don't even know in how many podcasts I mentioned this, but I think this is a very important idea that we should communicate especially for newer consumers. This idea, as you highlighted, that how can there be any other flavors than grapes? It's made out of grapes. Just this idea to mention all the time that throughout the process of fermentation and from the grapes as well and through aging, there are chemical compounds that are found in different fruits and different foods as well. So technically the same chemical compounds are there. Yeah. So when people understand this, then it opens up. I'm not saying that they are going to understand wine chemistry, and I'm not even sure that every consumer should, but understanding this idea is pretty breaks the mold and people lightens up.
No, I totally agree, and I think if only we could find a way to make it clearer, it would be great. I've got a tasting tomorrow night, and I'm going to be talking a lot about the chemistry because it's a group of people that they're knowledgeable about wine. They know quite a lot about wine, but I doubt they've ever really gone deep into why. And it's the why which is the most important part for me. It would be very interesting to see their reaction and to see what they think.
Yeah, I'm sure that it's going to be interesting all the time when with my friends or when we are having wine tastings, when we just touch our toe into the chemistry, if you tell the story right, people get excited and they ask questions. I have this idea, hopefully I can do it before someone else has the same idea, of making a video series about, not all, because there are thousands of compounds, but the most important aroma compounds, terpenes, different acids in wine, and explaining the origin of these compounds and what do they do in wine, and what can you feel.
Yeah.
Like simple story, like explanations. I think this would be interesting, and I would enjoy doing it. At least.
I think it's a great idea. You know, one of the things I really struggled with when I was studying for the diploma was the lack of really accessible materials, because you either have really basic or you have so confusing that you can't get into it. And I think there should be more resources somewhere in the middle. Enough information, but without needing a science degree. You know, it's it's important, I think.
That's a good point. And I think what makes it hard is the structure of the wine industry, because it's not logical at all. There are so many like axes that you can go on, like the geography of wine regions, the wine chemistry, technologies, cultures, everything. So there is no road to go through. There is no like good way or road or
you have to go
stepping stones
down this road, turn back, come back, this road back, this road back, and each time you're going back to the same point, which is fundamental winemaking and viticulture. But everywhere is just a little bit difficult, and you know, you think you understand it, and then something else happens, and you think, well, not again.
Yeah, that's the most, I mean, for me, it's a pretty frustrating thing that there are very, very few like objective rules in the wine industry that this is like this, and it's like this everywhere. When I learn something, okay, this is how you do it, or in viticulture or wine technology, and then you discover that, actually, there are lots of places where they do it differently, so it's quite hard to...
Fascinating, but difficult.
Yeah. So you mentioned that some wine regions, especially the classical wine regions, are pretty stubborn. What do you see how the wine industry is changing? Which wine region or country would you say that is coming up for example, in the next decade that can be in the legendary realm that is not in it right now?
It's very difficult to say because we just don't know what's going to happen in terms of global warming. So I would say, so I'm very excited about Germany. I think German red wines are already at a fantastic level, and I think they can go further. But obviously, at the same time, you have risk of it being too hot for Riesling. I think some countries such as Greece could be very interesting. I think Eastern Europe in particular, I think there's a lot of potential there, which hasn't yet really been discovered.
Happy to hear that.
I think, obviously, and Hungary, I've been to Hungary. I've had many, many incredible wines, and I really, really enjoyed what I tried when I was there. In the UK at the moment, it's quite difficult to get really anything, maybe apart from Tokaj. But when I remember when I was there, I absolutely loved Cape Francos, and I think it's really, really pretty. I really, really enjoyed trying it. So that's one of the things one of the wines I keep looking out for, hoping it will kind of become more popular. I know you can get it here, and you can get Blauchreinkisch as well from Austria, but you know it's kind of up and coming, and I think the whole region with more investment over the next 10 years, I think will be very exciting. I went to Georgia in Austria in August, and I had lots of really interesting wines, but I enjoyed them. I enjoyed them a lot, but I was never really amazed. And it was a bit of a shame. I really, really enjoyed the wines. It's a lovely country, really beautiful. Food's great. And the wine goes perfectly with the food. But I was never like, oh, wow. And I tried, from all ranges, I tried a huge variety of wine when I was there just to try and educate myself a bit more. But having said that, I've tried the Zora wines from Armenia. And they are really, really interesting. So I think the potential's there. It's just maybe the winemaking they have to look to the more premium sector. And I think if you're concentrating on making wines which are more kind of lower premium level, then it's difficult for you to actually escape that and go to the top. Yeah, so that will be interesting to see how it develops with time. I think one of the big problems we're having in the world right now is the heat. For example, Châteauneuf-du-Pape, I just don't drink it anymore. It's too much. I don't like 15% wines. I don't like wines at 14.5%. It's too much. For me, the perfect area is probably 13.5. And I think that's kind of like the golden part. So what I'd actually say is probably the most exciting thing to be looking at now is areas of France which previously were kind of ignored because they weren't quite warm enough for ripening, or they weren't quite suitable enough. And maybe the addition of some north-facing slopes where the sun is not quite as bright and things like that. I think that's really interesting. And as an example, I love Beaujolais. I think it's fantastic for one. I think that will come up greatly. I think there's a lot of potential there. And also...
it is already, I would say it's already getting more and more popular.
Getting more and more. But it can...
it's not there, of course.
Yeah, it's not... It's getting there. I mean, it's a poor example, but anyway. But in Burgundy, for example, you have the Haute-Côte, the higher valley, the valleys on the other side. I think there are really, really some beautiful wines there. And there are lots of places where the wines are actually a lot cheaper still. And like Perdon-Vergelès, I think is the superb value. Fissin, really, really good. Marsanne. They're a little bit cheaper than the main strip.
Yeah.
But provide really lovely experiences. So I'd be looking at those. One other thing actually that really, really, really interested me was I was in Malta and I tried quite a lot of wines and I was amazed by the alcohol content. Malta is a hot place, very sunny, but they had Cab Merlot blends which were 12.5%.
Wow.
I mean, I asked how it was so low and they didn't really have an answer. So I don't know, maybe they just didn't want to talk to me. But I was really surprised by it because I thought, so hot, surely you're going to have quite cooked fruit, but it wasn't. It was fresh fruit, nice acidity, good balance, and low alcohol. So maybe it's, I think they use pergola systems, and I think obviously there's a lot of influence from the sea breeze, which presumably cools the vines down. But also maybe the fact that actually their growing season starts a lot earlier. So they've got hotter weather from much earlier in the year. It's undisturbed, it's long, and they can harvest in the start of August. So perhaps
there are lots of
that, but it really interested me.
There can be lots of influences. Also, maybe as far as I know, the photosynthesis actually stops at over heat. So maybe it's too hot and the ripening kind of slows down, and maybe that affects it. So it's over the limit, but the sea, the breeze as well can influence, and obviously viticulture, how they manage the vineyard. Because in Europe, where we experience these hot vintages, the problem is that the vineyard and the vineyard management is quite hard to change the pruning system.
Still doing
from one year to another.
Still doing a lot of green harvesting as well, which just doesn't help. You get too much concentration in the berries, too much sugar.
But it's a difficult question, because without it, obviously, with too much green harvest, you increase the concentration of sugar, but you also increase the concentration of other compounds. Without the green harvest, maybe the sugar content would be on a better level, but the complexity would lack.
Yeah, I have thought about that as well, but at the same time, if it's generally warmer in you've got a longer ripening season, you've got longer time on the vine. I don't mean completely stopping green harvesting, but maybe just not quite as extreme.
And overlap,
and then it would maybe preserve it. But I think the south of France really needs to be very careful, because you're getting Hermitage at 15%, Châteauneuf-du-Pape at 15%, and it's that's not sustainable, in my opinion.
But also the grape varieties of their own is not really helpful. With Syrah and Grenache is crazy. So maybe with the cuvées they can play a little bit more, but it's difficult. So we are going north and to the east maybe. This is also interesting. You mentioned going with the north-facing slopes. This is also was a definition when I was at the beginning. Even when I was a child reading viticulture books, the first most number one important rule that the slopes should be south-facing slopes. Yeah. That's number one. If the slope is not south-facing, then you have a problem, especially in Europe. And now it's changing. So this is another example of not staying up to date and
and I think it's
no exact rules.
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of take all use everything at your disposal. Try different things, try and adjust and expand, and I think there's so many things that we can do slightly differently in order to preserve that traditional style of wine that we're so used to without losing it, which I think we are at risk of.
Yeah, we have to do our best. I'm really glad about the things you said about the potential of the Hungarian wine industry. Obviously, I'm Hungarian, and this is one of my goals, to try to help the Hungarian wine industry to maybe help pull some investments and to try to find a way, because this, like the legend of Tokaj, which is obviously a fantastic thing, and we really love it and appreciate it. I think it's a bit makes us behind, or it draws a huge shadow on the other parts of the Hungarian wine industry where we have huge potential. And obviously Tokaj being such a niche wine, a sweet wine, for special occasions, it cannot bring huge customer base, or it cannot be so popular. So what would you suggest? Where do you see potential to adjust? You mentioned Kék Frankos as an interesting wine. What should the Hungarian wine industry do in winemaking, viticulture, or in marketing, as you are really well versed in?
So I think one of the problems that we have in the world at the moment is that people generally aren't drinking much sweet wine.
Yeah.
It's really gone down a lot. I barely ever drink it. I love it, but I don't have it. I have 3 bottles in my wine rack that have been there for 2 years.
Yeah.
And I just don't find an occasion for it. So I think it's the same as a lot of countries in Europe in general, Central Europe. Simplify. Make it easy to understand. Make it clean. Don't try and compete with Sauvignon Blanc, for example, because you can't. Sauvignon Blanc is basically a brand in itself. So I think there's no point trying to counteract that and try and take its position. You need to come from a slightly different angle. Georgia tried with orange wines. Didn't quite work perfectly because not that many people like orange wines.
It's too niche.
It's too niche. And then at the same time, Recognizable, it's not easy to say, it's not easy to read. It's a bit of a problem. Now, I'd say potentially Kék Frankos is the same as that. At the same time, you have Egri Bigaver, which is also, I guess, it's quite difficult to say. And you could write bull's blood, but there is a bad connotation with that and the 80s and poor quality wine.
Yeah.
So that needs to be left behind. I'd suggest trying to come up with, this is on a kind of, an appellation level, trying to come up with something I think appellations should sometimes be treated as businesses, because appellations and the governing bodies, basically they need to be doing everything they can to increase the commercial success of that region. So if you're going to give it a name, make sure it's a name which is easy, that is relatable, that's understandable. It can be 4 letters. It can be in Hungarian. That's not a problem. But I think for me, the big question is, how do you make it so that someone that doesn't speak your language, because let's be honest, not many people do speak. I can say, a few words like bor and kishanom, and that's my limit. And I don't think anyone else would know anything. And so how do you translate that, what you have, into a format that can be understood well by someone in a different country? Because people in England, no offense to everyone in England, but we are terrible at languages. Really, really, really bad. And it's very difficult, and it's a bit uncomfortable for them sometimes when they see something that they don't understand, because it's not familiar. So familiarity is the big thing. Make it something, France is okay because we've had French wines for how many years? Hundreds, okay? With a wine like from Hungary, you need to find a unique, USP. You need to get in there with something which people can relate to, people can understand, and that is welcoming and inviting. I don't have the answers to all these questions, but I know that there is interest. Now, people have interest in wines. They want to try things, they want to explore, but you basically need to work from the very bottom to get people comfortable with it. Once they're comfortable, then you can go on. But the problem is that you can't just say red wine from Hungary, because no one will buy it, because it doesn't look good either. So you have to build a soft brand around something which is kind of understandable, something that you can get on board with, like a familiar word or something like that, or something that sounds quite catchy. And then you can build and go from there. And I think in terms of marketing, get it in the supermarkets. Get it in the supermarkets, get it on offer the whole time, get people talking about it, massive marketing campaign. Just look at Prosecco. No one knew what Prosecco was, and Prosecco is entirely marketed. It's nothing more. It's just the way it's been presented to people, and it works. Yeah. It really, really works. So I think
it's available everywhere.
Yeah, and there's been huge success on the back of that. And the same thing, like when I was at Majestic, there was a wine called Porta 6, which you probably have there as well. It's a Portuguese red.
Yeah.
Now, Porta 6 had a picture of Lisbon on the front, a little painting of Lisbon with a tram going down the street, and the word Porta 6. That was it, nothing more. Now that sold really well because it wasn't difficult, because it had a nice picture. Nice picture, it was warm, it was inviting, you didn't have to think about it, you just saw a pretty label and you took it. So at the bottom level of the industry, what you need to do is get people picking up that bottle. That's your main goal, is someone takes that bottle, takes it home, they think this is great, they tell their mates, and that's how you start. And then you start with more premium versions, and you start expanding and going from there.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, that making it approachable. But I think the challenge here is a bit more difficult with this idea. So you said this Porta 6 and huge marketing being available in the supermarkets everywhere. The problem in the Hungarian wine industry, I think our second biggest challenge is that the vineyard area is quite small compared to other wine countries. So we cannot produce huge quantities. So I think this road of being so present everywhere is more difficult. So I think I'm not trying to be elitist, but I think that the way should be for Hungary targeting more premium. I'm not saying that legendary wines, but a more premium market, because with lower level good quality but cheap wines everywhere in the supermarkets, it's probably impossible to be, because supermarkets are not talking with you if you are not sending thousands and hundreds of thousands of cases. So but I think more
like places like Majestic, like a really focused retailer, which is just that's a better place for it, because that's where the trend starts. But the problem with focusing on premium, it's very difficult to convince someone to spend £15 on a Hungarian wine when they could buy a £15 Saint Joseph and they know exactly what they're going to get. It's hard to recommend something. I mean, I would always buy it because I love exploring. It's super interesting to me to try brand new things, to educate myself about what wines are out there. But to a lot of people, they want comfort. They want something they understand, and that's the problem. So the biggest challenge is going to be getting it to a level where people feel comfortable going to a supermarket and picking it up. And that is a challenge that everyone faces. And it's a challenge that, you could, for example, get £15 wines onto shelves somewhere. But my opinion is that they would struggle to sell. And it's the same that we've seen recently with, so when I was at Majestic, we had Moldovan, we had Romanian, we had even Austrian, German. It was hard to sell them because they weren't known to people. People were still learning about these things. And so without that base of knowledge, how do you, I could sell a bottle to someone, a bottle.
Yeah.
But it's unlikely that they'll take the step again. Because even if they love it, they still like going back to what they know. And I think that's the main thing here, is that how do you create that understanding and that safety pillow, safety cushion? Yeah. That they know that it's nice and it's warm and they can trust it. That's what needs to be developed.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's the way I do agree. Because right now, other than the Tokaj name, the brand for the appellation, as you mentioned, other appellations are not very well known internationally. But another interesting thing that we don't really have like a huge meaningful name, a winery, a brand. Even for Tokaj, people only know the appellation, but I mean, Royal Tokaj is maybe people know it, but I'm not sure that people really know it about the winery. No one knows the winery, really. Just Tokaj and that's it.
We sell a lot of Monimpex, which is like from the 70s to 60s. We have a lot of that, which I think probably was state controlled, I think, back then. Yeah, apart from that, the only one I can think of is Sauska that I know of, but apart from that, I don't know many. Too long ago that I was there. You know, and if even I don't know it, then, you know, no one knows.
We have a problem.
Yeah.
I think that we have to work on the brand images and telling the stories, because there are stories and we have things to show, but maybe in the department of talking about it, we have to work more on that. Going back to the opening of the boxes, one thing that I'm really interested about, you showed some big boys, huge bottles. What do you think about big format wine bottles? And I'm also interested in the statistics of what are the trends. Are people buying big bottles? For what occasion are they buying it, or more for investment? And also, which size is the more typical? Because on your page we saw some huge ones.
Huge ones. Yeah. We sell quite a lot of large formats, predominantly magnums, most of all. It's quite rare that we sell much bigger than that. We have a 6-liter Imperial of Chardonnay Trockenbeeren Auslese from Alois Kracher. I mean, I can't see anyone buying that ever. I don't. It's crazy. It's a Chardonnay sweet wine from Austria in a 6-liter bottle. It sounds like a daydream. We have a lot of these bottles. I love big bottles. I think they're great, but I never buy them because I never have a reason to buy them. And I know that they are obviously suitable, for aging longer. You know, and it does help theoretically in the long term to preserve the fresher flavors, and they mature for longer. Apart, unless you're having a dinner party, it's quite rare that you're really ever going to open it. I've got 4 magnums in my storage, and they're just sitting there, and I don't know what to do with them. And one is a Schloss Lisa Riesling. I mean, why do I have a double bottle of Beerenauslese? It's crazy. But I bought it because it was fun. I think that's what magnums and large formats are all about. It's fun. It's cool. But we mostly sell magnums, and predominantly for people who are having parties or going out to share a bottle with friends at like a special lunch or something like that. But it's not so much. Predominantly we just sell bottle formats. Mostly in cases.
So the huge ones are just rare whales.
Yeah, so we have loads. There's one that's 21 litres, 27 litres. I can't remember. It's bigger than me, basically. I am small, but it really is bigger than me. I can barely lift it. It's so heavy.
I can imagine.
But it's very cool. 2019 Ponte Cane, I think. And it's enormous.
2019. Wow, it's gonna need that wine has a
30, 40 years ahead of it.
Of course.
In a bottle like that, it's going to keep going forever.
What was the oldest bottle you've ever tasted?
It was last Thursday. It was
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it's a recent memory.
Yeah. It was a 1926 Beaune. We don't know the producer. We don't really know anything about it because all it had was just the sticker of the vintage. And it was very low fill, but it tasted incredible. I thought it tasted incredible. Everyone else thought it was horrible. But there was a real lovely tiny bit of sweetness, sweet fruit still there, and I was just, it enchanted me.
How would you describe it? What did the other people say? Why was it awful? And what were the tasting notes?
So it smelled like really old mushrooms. There was nothing really fruity on the nose. It was kind of wet, it was damp, it was mushroomy, fungusy, that kind of, like you lift up a log in the forest, like that kind of thing. When you tasted it, it was a bit of dried orange, again mushroom, a lot of forest floor, a lot of savory flavors, but there was just like this kind of bright hint of like dried cranberry. And it was just this lovely sweetness to the wine that really, it made it quite charming. But it was obviously 90% dead. But that 10% was fantastic. I really loved it.
Yeah, and obviously the feeling of knowing that that wine was produced by people who none of them are alive, and what was happening in the world. It's so great to think back in history what was happening at that moment around the world. Maybe if you have personal stories or in your life, but it's so nice to contextualize it in this way.
And I always think, this has lasted through a world war, the Cold War, everything that happened after that, and it's still there. Yeah, it's still alive. It's still going. I think it's beautiful.
Even if it's just 1% alive, but still alive. There is something.
It's still alive. Yeah. I'd like to think that in 98 years, when I'm 98, I won't be that good.
Well, let's hope for the best.
But it's in pretty good shape considering.
Yeah, that's. I totally agree with you, and I always have this perspective. Tasting old wines, it's never a bad experience. No. Even if the wine is not in the best shape, but it's still such an emotional experience. You have to.
Like a time machine.
You have to have the right mindset. Yeah, exactly. So you have quite a wide perspective on the wine industry right now. If you would have to recommend me, so this is not financial advice, disclaimers, but if you would have to recommend me 5 wines to invest in right now, which wines would it be?
It's very difficult right now because the market, not good. But Sadie family, Eben Sadi, South Africa, making some really lovely wines. I mean, the prices there have stalled a bit as well, but I think it's, especially the whites, they're pretty good value, and they, if you can get them on release, they're quite good value, and then they sell for high prices. Large format champagne from amazing vintages, so 08s, 12s, in magnums, double magnums, that kind of thing, rarity factor. Then obviously the market at the moment is it's low. Okay, so theoretically it's a time to buy. We don't know if it's going to slip any lower, but these prices haven't been around for 5-10 years. So it's quite attractive in that sense. I'd consider maybe looking at the really, really top end blue chip Burgundy, something where it's so difficult to get a bottle that when you call up someone to say, can I buy this? They don't have it. That kind of level of wine. So DRC, Bizot, Roumier, things like that. I mean, Rousseau has slipped a bit recently, but, potentially, again, it's potentially an opportunity because these wines they're still incredibly rare. I wouldn't recommend Bordeaux because there's too much Bordeaux in the world. And a wine is not rare if you make 30,000 cases of it. If you're in Burgundy and the person has made 1,000 bottles, then it's rare. The Super Tuscans always perform pretty well. Sassicaia and Elia Maceto, if you can get them on release, that's a good place to go because, the prices do generally climb and pretty steadily as well. So that's quite an interesting area. But if you're buying them on the secondary market already, the prices can be quite high. So it's not overly clear what the potential growth will be. And finally, stuff like Vega, Vega Sicilia, it's high end. I think some of the Californians could do pretty well, like Kongsgaard. And Harlan Estate's a difficult one. I find it very difficult to recommend it. The prices seem to increase year on year from the estate. But for example, this year, I think it was $1,400 for a bottle of the latest release, but you could buy the 2009 release for $700. And for me, that's kind of a bit mad. I don't know. It's that kind of level of wine is a bit crazy. But I think, rarity is the key. If you're buying something where there are thousands of bottles in the world, why is that going to increase in price? You have to ask yourself the question. If it's released, it's a massive rarity, you can't get hold of it, it's all on allocation, that's probably where the money is, But buying secondary market at high prices, you're always going to struggle. That's my opinion.
Yeah. I see. Those are some great advices. Not financial advices, obviously.
No.
So how do you see in general the wine industry right now? You said that the prices are quite good right now. The economy everywhere is slowing down. But I would imagine that the high-end luxury market, the luxury wine market, is probably not following the general state of the economy that well, or is it?
It's hard to say. Like I said, Rousseau has slipped. It was 4.5 a bottle, and now it's about 3.7. So that's quite a big slip per bottle, you know. And I know, obviously, I mean, I'm just going off what I remember, so the figures might be a bit different. But there's certainly been some movement on that front, which isn't great. Overall, I'd say that if you look the general trends, then we can see that actually the lower end wines are selling. The mid-range wines aren't selling, and the higher end wines are selling. So it's the middle sector that's really taken a hit. And when I say middle sector, that's like probably £70 a bottle to 150 a bottle. So that's probably not middle sector.
This is going to make some more people angry in the comments, but
but that's in our market. Yeah,
of course, I see. Yeah.
So if you were to look at, for example, sales up to, I'd say, £30 to £35 a bottle, no, $40, $45, they're still quite healthy. You know, wines are still selling. It's that kind of range, let's say £300 to £900 a case. That's where it's slowed down a little bit, because those wines were probably a little bit too highly priced to start with, and they kind of lost a bit of interest. They're still quite expensive. Sales are slowed because, you know, at the same time, as you can get, for example, let's say you're looking for Bordeaux, okay? You can buy a case of, let's say, Aubailly for 6 bottles might cost you £800, £900. But you can get Domaine de Chevalier, also a Pesset, fantastic chateau, and you can spend £300. Can you really taste £600 of difference between those two? I love Aubailly. Aubailly is probably one of my favourite chateaus. But is it £600 more for a case? I mean, it's hard to say, right? So I think it's slowed down because there is still great value to be had at the slightly kind of mid-premium level. And then once you get really, really high, it's very quiet up until you reach investment grade. Investment grade, everything changes.
I see. So either good value or exciting and rare.
Exactly that.
I see.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. So for the end, I had this idea of doing a little game, a tier list of the top 10 most, based on Wine Searcher, the most searched for wines. The top 10 wines that are people interested in. And I would like you to list them in this tier list based on your ideas of how much they deserve their place of being so searched for.
I like it.
So let me share my screen.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's start. I'm not sure they are not in order.
So we've got
anymore.
Mouton, Dom, Opus, Margot, DRC, Aubryon, Lafite, Latour, Petrus, and Sass.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good top 10. I wouldn't mind that in my cellar.
Probably no one would.
Probably. I mean, I'd take Dom down a bit, personally. I think Dom Perignon is...
Okay.
I mean, it's fantastic, but it seems quite high. Yeah, let's do that. Right.
So this is not in any order. This is just, they are just placed in, and we are going to place them in the... So where do we put the Dom Perignon?
I'd go about C.
Okay.
I'd probably go... I'd go DRC to S. I mean, DRC is right at the top. For me.
So they deserve the legendary status.
Yeah.
Probably the most.
I think so. I think I've got to go Petrus after that. Tiny bit lower.
So still in S tier, but a bit lower like this?
Yeah,
maybe?
exactly, yeah. Oh, it's difficult.
Let's go in order. Like this, maybe this way is easier.
Let's do it, yeah.
So
Lafite. I love Lafite, but I'm going to put it in a solid B.
Okay.
On this scale of amazing wines. So next we have Margot. I'd go a tiny bit higher than Lafite.
Okay.
Just because I like it more.
Sassicaia.
Oh, Sass. Sass is fantastic. Although I did try 91 that didn't excite me that much. It was great,
Oh,
but
really?
it wasn't kind of that incredible. Maybe the bottle was a bit tired, but I'd put that at the same level as Lafite for me.
Okay. Aubryon?
Aubryon, Margot level.
Margot level, okay.
I might change
Opus?
this later. Opus 1, I'd go between B and C.
More like a popular
Yeah,
pop wine.
exactly. It's kind of cult, but it's...
Yeah.
I don't know if it's quite... I mean, it's amazing, but... Anyway, Latour, yes, go level with Lafite as well. I think they're all on a bit of a similar playing field. But I would put Mouton together with Aubryon, just one level up, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now I'm feeling that So let's move those three, so Aubryon, Margot, and Mouton, up to A, fully A.
Aubryon,
Yeah.
Mouton,
Yeah.
and which one did you say?
Margot. Yeah.
Margot.
Yeah. And then the other three up half.
With Lafite and Sassicaia.
Yeah. And then Opus,
Okay.
again, that can stay there, that's good. And I'd move Dom up one little bit.
Like this,
Yeah.
on the level
Yeah.
of Opus, maybe.
Yeah. So I think they're all incredible wines. I just think that there is a slight tier system there that, you know, I visited all of the first growths and I like those ones more. When I was there, I just enjoyed it a bit more. Margot was especially lovely.
I see.
And I mean, I love Sass, but I just do think it's a little bit like one maybe grade lower. And then Dom, I think Dom Perignon's great, but at the same time, I'm a little bit kind of skeptical about Champagne because I think there is so much incredible grower Champagne out there that deserves more recognition.
Yeah,
And I think it's slightly underrepresented. And there are, for example, so many other incredible wines in the world that maybe I would put into that chart at a similar level. And just, you know, for example, Hermitage, for example, from maybe Jaboulé or something would certainly, you know, that would maybe a little bit lower, but it would still be there. And other wines like Pingus and Vega Sicilia and... I mean, but even then, at the same time, for example, you can go to Germany and you can buy the most incredible Riesling, and it will cost you a tenth of the price. So it's you know, it's always a bit difficult to rate these things. And when I talk about them, I always kind of remember that I think, oh, but there's this as well, and there's this, and there's this, and I think it's I mean, wine brands are, you know, they are brands. That's what they are.
Of course.
And it's a lot. There's a lot of marketing that goes into all of these.
Well, I think this was an interesting rating, and obviously it's a personal choice, and it's really hard to measure these things. But I think it was interesting. Your ideas and your way. It's interesting that the top Bordeaux's are in the similar ballpark, maybe with these three a bit above, but they are on similar levels. Which wine, if you could choose any of from the world, would be your personal most top legendary dream bottle?
If I could choose anything, I would go for Henri Jaillet Cros Parentu.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that will never happen, and I definitely don't have enough money to buy that. But that would be... I've heard so many things, and the guys at work have tasted it, met him, they've been there, they've done it, and that would be special, very special. Well,
I wish for you that someday you can experience it.
I'd be happy with a Bourgogne Pastrugrin from Chase. But even that's unlikely. I think they sell for about 1,000 a bottle. So crazy.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your perspective on these bottles. Obviously, as I said, these are just subjective ideas, but it's interesting to hear from a person who has experience with these bottles, because it's more grounded ideas, because people talk about these bottles, but a person who have experience with them, maybe your perspective is more valuable in a way. Thank you for this conversation. I really enjoyed it. I think it was valuable for our listeners as well, and hope to meet you at some point in real life, not just on the Google Meet.
Yeah, we can share some cake frankos.
Exactly. I will bring you some interesting Hungarian wines, and maybe we can start building the Hungarian
Absolutely.
wine brand.
Build an empire.
Yes. That's the plan.
Fantastic.
I will send you some top wines as well.
Brilliant. Yeah, it'd be good to know. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you for joining.
Cheers.
Cheers. Have a good night.